Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. I hope you had a very good weekend. Let's see who we have on the stream tonight. We have Derek. Great to see you, Derek. Simon, great to see you. Mike again. Enzo God, great to see you. Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you too. Killer, thanks for coming on and moderating. We have Tiny Demolition Lover. Hope you're well up there in Scotland. We have PA3456, great to see you. What you saying, Max? He's busy giving Nadine Doris a peerage for her loyalty. Colin, great to see you. Mark, great to see you too. John O'Sullivan, great to have you on. We also have Adrian, great to see you. Chatty Rat, Roisin, great to see you too. Inconsequential, great to see you too. Hope you're well. We have CGM, great to see you. Norflinger, Gene T, Fearless Wolf, great to see you. Hope you're well. We also have Casper, great to see you. Stephen, Michelle, Razormouth. Does 4,000 include petrol or something? Seems quite high. No, it's actually the energy bills are expected to go up in January to £4,000 a year in the UK. So it doesn't include petrol, unfortunately. Katrina, great to see you. We also have Evelyn, great to have you on. Young Ralph, great to see you. FSM is the dog, great to see you too. James Wigg, Alba, great to see you. Sean, Mashed Potatoes, Saltney Magic, great to see you too. Sock Juice, great to have you on. Saltney, Ted Boy, and so many. Katrina Bryce, great to see you in. Who else? Ava, and so many more. Great to see everyone on. Sorry I can't say hello to everyone. We have a super chat from Valerio Tarantino. Great to see you, Valerio. Hope you're well. Hi, Max. Hope you can interview Martin Lewis once. I would love to interview Martin Lewis, but he's very, very difficult to get hold of, and he's on holiday at the moment, which he deserves. He's doing a wonderful job. He's providing very important information to people, and he has been trying to help people where he can by providing them with tools on ways to save some money, to protect themselves against the cost of living crisis. But he himself has said that he's run out of tools, and now it requires government action. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. Thanks so much, Valerio. Hope you're well. We have a super chat from Yarwood. Great to see you, Yarwood. Another vote for Martin Lewis interview. I will certainly ask him. I think I sent him a message some time ago asking if he'd be interested to have a chat, but I haven't heard back from him. And I imagine he's very, very busy. But I definitely will try to contact him again. And if you guys can as well, if he's on Twitter, if you guys would like, for us, myself and Political X to have a chat with him, we can have an hour-long chat with him. Please do contact him, because we can try, but if more and more people send him a message, he's more likely to respond. Thanks so much for that. Alyoza, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thanks so much for your super chat. It was great to see you on Byline TV. It was a pleasure to be on Byline TV. And I want to say thanks to Political X for helping to organize that as well. So they contacted me about a year ago and said, would you be interested to come on the show? And it was a bit complicated at that time. And then I reached out to them again, and then we had a chat with Peter Jukes. And then Peter was speaking to Political X, and Political X asked, look, would you be interested in having a chat with Max again? And they said, yeah. And it was organized with Peter Jukes and Byline TV, and said, look, if you're over in London, we'd love to have a chat with you. So I jumped at the chance. And it was really, really nice. I'd love to do it again. I was shaking like a leaf. I was a little bit nervous. People have told me that it didn't seem like that, but inside I was a bit nervous. I've never done anything like that before, but I'm glad that you guys you guys liked it, and it was a lot of fun for me as well. It was a very nice experience. And hopefully we may be able to do some collaboration in the future. But until I have more news about that, I can't really say anything. Thanks so much for that super chat. James O'Brien saying getting behind Starmer because people on the left fight each other too much, fight each other. Yes, this is a big problem, of course, on the left, is that people will always find faults within themselves and not as much with the other side. And people really need to come together, need to work together, and that's something we try to do with the Sunday brunch. Is we try to bring people on board, try to promote other channels. The Sunday brunch, if you're not a subscriber, do subscribe to it. We have another show coming out on Sunday. 2 very, very interesting personalities on that, and very interesting things to say, very interesting backgrounds as well. And we're trying, or hoping, eventually to get a Brexiteer on. I don't know about Farage, but somebody. And also recommend people to us if there's somebody, even somebody who's not famous, somebody in your community who's doing wonderful work, who you think would be interesting to have on. Please let us know. You can contact me on Twitter if you want, or we'll find some way to get the message to these people. Is Starmer really on the left? Says Mark Telfer. I think one of the reasons Starmer is being very quiet is I hope this is true, that he believes that let the Tories tear each other apart, let them be responsible for the disaster that's unfolding, and then I can provide an alternative. Now, I wish he would actually do it sooner, because people are struggling at the moment and they need somebody to stand up and speak for them. At the moment, who's filling that void is Mick Lynch. And Mick is doing a wonderful job, but Mick is not a politician. He's a union leader. He is speaking about the cost of living crisis. He is talking about what's happening to ordinary people. But once again, he's not the leader of the opposition. He doesn't have a political background, and his focus is getting pay rises for his members. Okay. He's not there to fix the cost of living crisis. His job is to protect his members, to protect members of the RMT. And while he does raise other issues, we can't expect him to carry this load. This is the responsibility of the opposition, and they need to start doing something. Get behind Starmer, to what end? Polls have him behind on a head-to-head with Truss. He's hopeless, and I have been saying that for about a year now. For about a year, get rid of Stanley. Look, I wouldn't put too much into polls, because it's not, at the end of the day, an election based on Keir Starmer or Liz Truss versus Liz Truss. It's more, are you happy with Liz Truss? I've said this before. Elections are a referendum on the incumbent. And Boris Johnson was able to sell the public the idea that he would get Brexit done. So back in 2019, yes, Jeremy Corbyn had very bad ratings. He was -60 or something like that in approval rating, which was a big problem for him. But more and more people, and there wasn't a massive swing to the Tories. There was a swing where it was necessary. And enough people in particular constituencies voted for Johnson because they thought he would get Brexit done. So they were willing to ignore his lies and trust him, which is a bit paradoxical, but that's what it came down to. Yeah, I trust him to get Brexit done, to get this thing over the line so we can stop talking about it, we can move on to other issues. And of course, it was all built on a lie, like Brexit itself. Bill Milligan, thanks so much for that super chat. Scottish Government has an energy company that supplies those on low income with subsidised gas and electricity. This is what we need. Thanks so much, Bill, for highlighting. I didn't know about that. This is what we need. You need nationalisation, or at least subsidised gas and electricity. Because so many people are struggling in England and Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland at the moment as well. But if the Scottish Government is doing something, why isn't the UK government doing it? because Boris Johnson doesn't want to do anything, because he doesn't want to be tarred in some way with this brush. He doesn't want to be held responsible for helping out people, appearing like a socialist in a sense, putting the country before the party. Maybe Boris Johnson wants whoever to take over, Liz Truss likely, to eventually send him off to the House of Lords. I don't know. Nationalise the energy industry. Yes, it has to be nationalised. Then the government can decide the price. But they don't want to do that. Why? Because, well, some of them, I think it's both economical, it's like greed, but also ideological. So you have the ideologues who don't believe that the taxes, like for example, the state should get involved in these things. It should be left to the private sector. It should be left to the market. And these Tories are not suffering, obviously. They probably have massive amounts of money in their bank accounts, so they're not suffering. And they're happy to see others suffer because they have to protect the free market. They must protect these companies from the state. And then you have the others who are probably making money out of this. They have shares in these companies, and every time a massive dividend is paid out, they pocket a huge amount of money. So you have on one side the ideologues who don't want the government getting involved, and the others who don't want the government getting involved because it benefits them. They'd rather spend the money on vanity projects and tax breaks for the rich than spend money on the public where it's needed. Yes. And it's going to continue. And what frustrated me a bit today was Angela Rayner saying that, and I have to say this, it's frustrating to hear, but Angela Rayner talking about how Scotland should not be independent because it would result in Tory governments. But, you can't continue to say Scotland should be part of the Union to protect Britain from the Tories. But it's had the Tories for 12 years now in a row. And, if things go really pear-shaped, Liz Truss could win the next general election. She has a massive majority at the moment. If she has the media on her side and they, ramp up the propaganda to 11, it's possible that they could win it. It's not guaranteed. It's not very likely, but it's not impossible. And then it would be another 4 years, 5 years of the Tories. I don't think the Scottish people want to wait that long. Not our problem. England needs to fix England and not look at others to save them. Anyway, let's jump into some of the comments or some of the topics. So today we're going to talk about, of course, the cost of living. Boris Johnson being AWOL. He's just come back from holiday, of course. It says here, Johnson accused of allowing summer of drift amid cost of living crisis. Business leaders urge Prime Minister to act as Number 10 says there are no plans to address crisis until new Tory leader is voted in. Boris Johnson has been accused by business leaders of allowing a summer of drift to take hold after he ruled out no new cost of living measures until the new Prime Minister is in place. The Prime Minister's official spokesperson said that there would be no plans for a Cobra meeting to address the cost of living crisis. Well, they even I wondered, did they include the word crisis when they were saying that, yeah, we're not going to have any Cobra meetings for this crisis. Why? Because it's not a crisis. And it would be for either Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak to work out a plan. Why not just have something until they become Prime Minister? You can't do that. You can't have some mini budget until what is the point in having a government if it's not doing anything? What's the point in having a chancellor? I know he's still on holiday, as far as I know. Nadine Zawari is still on holiday, as far as I've seen. What is he doing? Can't he work from home? Can he work from the beach? Downing Street, the biggest challenges for family budgets are coming towards the end of the year. No, they're happening now. And this would be a matter for either Truss or Sunak to decide whether to take action to help. However, the CBI, Britain's biggest business group, called on the Prime Minister to take immediate action, bringing together the leadership candidates to agree a way forward to support struggling households. Tony Danker, the CBI Director General, urged Johnson to direct the Cabinet Secretary to prepare a package of choices that could be proposed to the leadership candidates now on how to support the most vulnerable people and firms through the autumn and winter, and to keep making the decisions and delivering to help build business confidence over the next 4 weeks. But Johnson isn't going to do that because, well, he doesn't care. It goes on to say that energy bills are due to rise in the autumn and will have potentially tripled since 2019 to 3,600 by January. In addition, families are also facing inflation forecast to rise to 13% in October, and mortgage bills are going up due to the interest rate rise to 1.75%. Johnson declined the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown's suggestion of a cost of living summit between number 10 Liz Truss and Sunak as he returned from holiday in Slovenia. Number 10 refused to say who had paid for the Prime Minister's break. Like, Boris Johnson went on holiday and he didn't pay for his own holiday. Because if the number 10 refused to say who paid for it, obviously somebody else paid for it. Probably Zach Goldsmith, like he did before. You know, he allowed Boris Johnson to use his villa. Or somebody else, probably a Tory donor, another Tory donor. Look, if these people are donating to the party, they're obviously getting something in return. Or they're allowing Boris Johnson to go on holiday for free. This is corruption. Once again, this is pure corruption. A Tory donor gives Boris Johnson a free holiday. What do you think they get in return? It's not holiday pictures or a stick of rock or something. It's not bring me back something from Slovenia. No, it's a seat in the House of Lords, or it's a lucrative contract. You know, Boris Johnson isn't going yet because he wants to get all these sweeteners before he leaves. He wants to. He also has a bucket list to complete, but he also, I believe, is there because corrupt individuals want their slice of the pie before he leaves. Because some of them have invested heavily in Boris Johnson, you know, and now they don't want to see their investment lost. Spokesperson said Johnson was due to speak to Nadine Zawari, the Chancellor, later this week. Yeah, just take it easy. There's nothing. Don't do any heavy lifting at the moment. You know, you've come back from holiday. Maybe he needs another holiday. Have you ever come back from a holiday and you said, "My God, I need another holiday after that"? I don't know what he was doing in Slovenia anyway, but. Later this week, support was coming later this year was on track, but insisted it would be inappropriate for him to take on major financial challenges. Because he doesn't care. It's not inappropriate because it's a bother. Why should I be bothered with dealing with these things? I'm just, spinning my wheels. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Oh well, let's fuck off to Ukraine for a month. Yeah, that's what he was doing. That's what it's all about. Having a bit of fun, taking the piss, and letting somebody else pay for it, and corrupting the system while he's doing that. These people don't donate to the Conservative Party because they agree with the ideology. Generally, some people may, but most of these big donations are because they want something in return. It could be some sort of legislation also. It's not just about something tangible like a seat in the House of Lords or a contract. It can also be pushing through laws to protect a particular sector or industry or individual. The convention is not for this Prime Minister to make major fiscal interventions during this period. Why doesn't he just leave then? What's the point in all of this waiting? Have a caretaker government. That's what should have happened when Boris Johnson, quote unquote, resigned. He should have left that day and Dominic Raab should have taken over. And Dominic Raab should be running the country at the moment. It's a terrible thought, but, at least he would be trying to do something, or at least the opposition and trade unions and individuals could be putting pressure on someone, because you can't put pressure on Boris Johnson when he says, well, I'm not going to do anything. The government's energy bill support scheme provides £400 discount on bills spread over 6 months. Like, if bills are going... I saw something on Twitter today where somebody's bills are going up to... They were £200 last year. This year, they're going to be £900 a month. £900 a month. This is what they were quoted using some app. I don't remember the app that they were using to find the best deal. £900 a month. It's like £11,000 a year or something like that. £400 spread over 6 months is not going to cut it. £650 means tested once-off payment to 8 million low-income families, £150 for those on disability benefits. Once again, if bills are going up by like £500 a month, how is 150 going to have any impact? And £300 for pensioners. This was designed when the forecast for the October price cap was $2,800. However, it is now forecast to rise to $3,600 by January, leaving many families wondering how they will cope. The original 2,800 was based on... Sorry, the original support was based on this. And of course, the real figure is this. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. England needs a social contract with its people, just like Scotland has with its people. Yes. I think what's going to come out of this eventually is England's own parliament. English devolution. If Scottish independence doesn't arrive straight away, I think there's going to be a real push for English independence, because ordinary English people realise that Westminster is not working for them either. And people in the north feel left behind compared to those in the south. And I think it's driving a real wedge between many different parts of the country. And it can't be sustained. And I think you're onto something there, Alistair. I think it's going to drive a request for some sort of devolved power in, and it's not just about moving the capital, moving parliament, or moving administrations. There's going to be a real request for an English parliament. And I think there is more and more support for that. Roisin, thanks so much for that super chat. You forgot Magic super chat. Oh, thanks for that. Sorry about that. Where is Magic's? Magic, sorry. Apologies for that. The only money they spend is that which is the minimum to buy the votes the next time round, or to send to Tunbridge Wells. What's that? Yes, it's about Tunbridge Wells is an extremely deprived area. It's one of the most affluent parts of the United Kingdom. It's not just the most affluent part of the south, but it's of the entire United Kingdom, I think, Tunbridge Wells. So, Rishi Sunak going there saying, you people are deprived. I've passed by these houses and I've seen only one Range Rover in each driveway. You need two. So, it's, and this is from a guy who drives a Kia Rio, so he knows what he's talking about. But it is about, spending the minimum just to buy votes. And it's working. Convince the public that they're actually doing something. Not actually do anything, but just convince people that you are. And there is this divide taking place, dividing the north from the south, dividing the deprived from the affluent. Thanks guys for that, and thanks to Roisin. Apologies, you had to send a super chat for that. My fault. Hedgehog Legs, thank you so much for that super chat. Hope you're well. I've seen a lot of your stuff on Twitter being posted about different environmental issues at the moment, or and what's happening there. Number 3, thank you so much for that super. This is the Tory version of going green. Yes, thank you so much for that. It's I think this is going to cause real harm. I really hope that something is going to break within the party, the Tories, and someone is going to say we actually need to do something. We can't just sit idly by. We can't talk about woke, or we can't talk about cutting taxes. We actually need to grasp this nettle, and we need to deal with it. And somebody will do it before it's too late, because waiting until September, then you're going to have whoever takes over, Liz Truss probably, and she's going to, what is she going to do at the beginning? She's going to talk a bit about, maybe she'll go on holiday, like Boris Johnson. As soon as she takes over, she'll go on holiday for a week. I wouldn't be surprised, but when she takes over, there'll be a bit of a hullabaloo, and then eventually she'll probably get to the stage where, okay, let's have a budget, and then we'll see what's contained within that. But I don't think she's going to do a massive stimulus plan. That would be what's necessary. They're saying 4,400 now, max. It just goes up every day. Riots by Christmas, says Sean. It's possible. Like, if people, let's just take a pensioner, for example. State pension, they're saying that the bills would be half. That means somebody who's on a fixed income like a state pension, what are they going to spend? They're already struggling to pay the bills, and they're already resorting to other measures like staying on a bus to keep warm. We've seen elderly people, I've covered it before on the channel, elderly people resorting to eating soup in order to avoid, because they can't cook things for long periods of time because they're afraid of the cost involved. Families rejecting food that needs to be cooked. Look, and then there's talk, of course, of not just food banks, but warm banks, as you guys educated me on a couple of streams ago. The idea that schools, community centres, churches would open their doors up at night for people to stay the night there, or for at least for a few hours, to keep warm, because wrapping yourself in a duvet isn't going to cut it. There are parts of England where it's going to get very cold, parts of Scotland as well, where it's going to get very cold this winter. And wrapping yourself in a blanket, especially, if you're living in an older house which doesn't have proper insulation, or has single glazed windows, or old double glazed windows, it's not going to keep the heat in. And you're not going to have any heat actually to keep in, because people will not be turning on their heating because they're afraid of the cost. Rubbing up against people in public keeps you warm. It's not advisable, but it's not something you really want to be doing. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Nurses in England, Wales now being balloted for strikes. I heard someone on the radio complaining about that. Obviously, it was to Nick Ferrari, who was saying that they shouldn't go on strike. They earn enough money, and what about the people? What about their patients? But nurses and doctors are not able to, nurses in particular, and care assistants, they're not earning enough to survive. What are they supposed to do? I hope, I don't know if this has happened, somebody can inform me. Has the parking fees been taken away at least? Or have they been reinstated since the pandemic? Because during the pandemic, I covered it on the stream as well, how nurses and other NHS staff had to pay for parking. Then it was reduced or removed, and then it was reinstated after the pandemic. Please tell me that's gone. At least that during this cost of living crisis. Plenty of gammon. Well said, Mike. They're appearing all over the place. NHS strikes, I hear it rumbling away. Postal workers striking soon. We're getting closer and closer to a general strike. Parking fees free in Scotland, reinstated in England. I know a lot of people here are from Scotland, so I don't know if they... Max, nope, it's back. Like, really? You have NHS staff relying on food banks and paying for parking. Ruth, thanks for that comment. Says, as an NHS nurse, I went on strike in 1981. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. Parking fees were the first thing they put back. We clapped for the NHS, and then we put back in the parking fees. There's a cost of living crisis. Many nurses, in particular, are burnt out, and they're saying, I'm leaving the profession because I can't stick it any longer. There was a nurse, I think, on one of the shows, I don't remember which one it was on LBC, I think, where she said that at the end of a very difficult period, the administrator, the boss, came around and gave each of the workers, the NHS staff, a stale croissant. One of the ones that you find, the ones you buy in the supermarket. That was the thanks that she got. And along with the parking fees, it's criminal. Thanks, Magic. Sorry, I missed your previous chat, super chat. Direct action against parking meters. I don't know. Maybe that's something that could happen. I can't say whether that's a good idea or not. Direct action. Tesco workers got a 50p rise. 50p. Colin Stewart, join a union. Yes. It's not going to help you out immediately, but if more and more people join the union, at least there will be solidarity with others. And I really hope one of the good things that will come out of this is more people will join a trade union. Trade union membership is very low at the moment. That needs to be changed, because if you look at who's leading the challenge against the government, who's fighting at the moment, it doesn't seem to be the Labour Party, but it seems to be the trade unionists, the Eddie Dempseys and the Mick Lynches of this world. They got €1,000 in Ireland to the health staff because of COVID-19. Tories moved from clapping to taking parking fees or clamping NHS workers. News channel, good to see you. Anyway, let's move on. This is what this in relation to this story is
on video. Every high street these days, families are making tough choices about what they can afford. But while energy bills are about to soar to new heights, politicians and business leaders say the government is in paralysis.
The Prime Minister could gather the candidates to ensure that on August 26th, when we hear what the price rise is going to be, there's a common pledge, a cost of living pledge from the Prime Minister, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak to say they will indeed stand behind houses and households as they face rising energy bills.
The cost of living payments announced by the Treasury will continue to be rolled out over the coming months. But with fuel bills forecast to hit well over £3,000 this autumn, millions more people could be plunged into fuel poverty.
It's Boris Johnson's first day back from holiday, and the Chancellor over at number 11 has been away too. And when asked whether it was all hands on deck to give people further support, the Prime Minister's spokesman said no, the convention is that decisions on further measures will be for his successor.
Once again, why? Why do you have to follow convention? Why don't you say there's a crisis at the moment, we need to provide support immediately? And whatever the next Prime Minister does can be to add to that or can be to take away from that. But you have to do something now. People can't wait until October. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. TUC needs to call a strike. Yes, and I heard that from Mick Lynch yesterday, where he said he doesn't have the ability to call a general strike. It has to be the TUC. So I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on the TUC over the next number of weeks, and maybe a lot of pressure on the TUC to do something. But as far as I know, the TUC is the biggest union, so they are the ones, excuse me, if they call a general strike, the other unions will join in. So I think pressure is going to be applied to them. Thanks for that, Alistair. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Some NHS staff park miles away and walk to avoid the fee. Like, I'm not a fan of paid parking at a hospital, because most people who go to the hospital don't go there for fun, okay? They go there because it's necessary. Look, if you want to charge parking for visitors, you know, if you're a patient or if you work there, it's free. But you can't, like, what is the justification? I would love to ask somebody who supports this, what is the justification for charging NHS staff a parking fee? I'm not going to go off on this because I could talk about it and rant about it for hours, but I really don't understand the justification. I understand why it's happening, because private companies are making money out of this, and the NHS has sold off these rights, in a sense, to these private companies. The trusts probably, or someone, maybe it's the Department of Health, is doing it. But somebody's making money out of this, probably a private company, and that's why it's in place. But members of the public or members of government, how do they justify this? I don't think they can. Alexis, thanks so much for that super chat. Have an idea regarding energy bills. See you in Discord. Okay, thanks so much. I'll check that out later. For example, I think something that needs to happen is the energy price cap has to be brought back to, for example, 2020 level or 2021 level. That would help a lot of people immediately, so their bills would drop immediately from tomorrow. This would be, the government would have to inform Ofgem to do this. They would have to say, okay, bring down the energy price cap from tomorrow. They could do it if they want. They have the power to do that. Then you would have to have a stimulus plan. So you would have to give money directly to people. Now, it could be a UBI, or it could be some sort of once-off payment. Maybe a once-off payment is more likely, not the best, but more likely. But unfortunately, I don't think either Liz Truss or Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak actually want to do that. Magic Trade Union Congress, the Union of... Sorry. I was thinking the TUC was a trade union, so it's the Trade Union Congress. Thanks for that clarification. I was always under the impression the TUC was a trade union. I didn't remember the acronym. Now I do. Thanks for that. I should be paying you for this information, not you paying me. Thanks a lot. Energy cap needs stopped right now, but yes, the energy cap needs to go down, not up. If it makes some redistributors go bankrupt, nationalize those redistributors. That's a possibility. Yes, you could compensate them, or you could nationalize them.
The leadership contenders have distinctly different plans. Liz Truss prioritising tax cuts, but not ruling out going further. Rishi Sunak's team say today that he would guarantee targeted support to the most vulnerable. These residents in Slough are already feeling the pinch.
Nobody knows where they're going to get the money from. No, the wages is still too low.
You have your plan like, okay, I'm going to spend this much money on my bills, but then the bills go higher, so now you have to cut other things out. So it's a bit of a glitch. I don't know what the government's going to do to help us, but...
And she's right. The idea that, if somebody's on a fixed budget, they have already planned out, okay, this is how much I'm going to spend on energy. This is how much I'm going to spend on food. And then as the price of energy gradually goes up, they say, okay, I have to cut back on something else, cut back on food, for example. But then there's a limit. You can't spend nothing on food.
Don't see any hope.
It's not my problem anymore. It's the next one. And then there's difficulty with the next leadership dealing with the problems of the previous one. So I think there just needs to be a leadership that just doesn't run away after difficult challenges.
Good morning.
A former Prime Minister says the crisis cannot wait until the autumn.
Every other country there is a recognition of this crisis and people are acting now, and it's time for this government, no matter what's happening in the Tory leadership contest, they should all get together and see if they can agree on a programme, but it's got to happen in the next few days.
But once again, I don't think it's going to happen in the next few days, because you need the current Prime Minister to get involved. And Boris Johnson is the worst. He's the worst person at every time. He's the worst Prime Minister during the pandemic, the worst Prime Minister during Brexit, and now this crisis, this cost of living crisis, he's the worst Prime Minister to have, because he's a narcissist. It's not about him. It doesn't benefit him in some way to deal with this. Johnson, in a way, liked what's happening in Ukraine, because he can go there, he can go on a walkabout, he can be, admired. But there's nothing from this that will, Boris Johnson won't go on a walkabout in public, because he would likely be, I don't know, what would happen to him?
Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has written asking Boris Johnson to bring forward an emergency meeting with devolved governments.
I guess it's better to write to Boris Johnson, because there's no point writing to Liz Truss, because Liz Truss said she would ignore the First Minister.
For households, she says, are unable to feed themselves or heat their homes. At the end of August, the new price cap for the winter months will be announced. The Prime Minister and his would-be successors are on notice that they don't have weeks or months to find solutions. Tomorrow,
they don't. No, I want to talk about... so it's some of the... there's a debate actually taking place at the moment. It says here, Labour says a complete disgrace that Britain's at risk of power cuts. So this is something that's just come out today. It came out before I did the live stream. Started the live stream. That there may be power cuts coming. Now, the Bloomberg ran this story. It says, Ed Miliband, the Shadow Secretary for Climate Change and Net Zero, said it is a complete disgrace that people are at risk of power cuts this winter. This is him responding to a previous story. Responding to the Bloomberg story, he said in a statement, whilst the Tories squabble over tax cuts, Britain is now readying itself for catastrophic power cuts this winter. This is a complete disgrace to a British public already struggling at the hands of an absent government that has left our economy in tatters. What we're facing is the result of 12 years of Tory government, which has failed to prepare and refused to invest, leaving bills higher and our country less secure. Instead of mending the roof while the sun was shining, they cut back on the things that would be protecting families and businesses now, scrapping all home insulation programs, blocking the cheapest homegrown energy like onshore wind and solar, and shutting down our remaining gas storage. Labour would upgrade. Okay, so what Labour would do. This is in regards to. Let me see if I can get this story. This is from Bloomberg. The UK facing planned power cuts amid shortage in winter. The government is making contingency plans for what might happen if Britain runs out of gas over the winter. This is unbelievable. Under what was described as a reasonable worst-case scenario, which means something that would be reasonably described as a worst-case scenario, not a worst-case scenario that would be reasonable to experience. There would be planned power cuts for industrial and domestic users. And this is from Bloomberg. It says UK government is preparing for winter energy crisis, reasonable worst-case scenario that could see peak demand surpass capacity. Sorry, what am I saying? Peak demand surpass capacity, emergency measures for 4 days in January, including organised blackouts for industry and even households. Now, this happened in the 1970s. Whoops, I'm opening the link anyway. This happened in the 1970s. But look at our economy today. The economies around the world, completely different to the 1970s. We have the internet, for example. We have systems dependent upon 24-hour power availability. Can you imagine blackouts? Internet systems would go down for a few hours every day. So many systems are dependent on not just electricity, but internet connections. And I can't even get my head around the idea that you would have blackouts. Whenever there's a blackout before, it's something, there was some sort of emergency, there was some sort of problem, and it lasted a few minutes. Imagine this lasting for hours. A few times a week, or a few times a day for once a week or something like. I don't know what the plan is, so I haven't seen the article, but this is unbelievable. An economy. Can you imagine the damage this would do to the economy? Damage this would do to society. It's not like back in the 1970s, people would just, grim and bear it and, use a candle or something. Entire systems are based on using energy 24 hours a day. I really hope this is not going to happen. James Week, thanks so much for that super chat. Johnson has made done wonders for raising the reputation of Neville Chamberlain, Frederick North, and even Benjamin Disraeli. Yes, it's like, you think I'm bad. You think I'm bad. Look at this guy in the future, Boris Johnson. Unbelievable. Thanks for that, James. Yes, but Johnson has set the bar so low. Maybe Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss would actually set it even lower than that. I don't know. The Antonian Empire strikes back. Thanks so much, number 3. Yes. Once again, I've said before, Eton should be maybe a prescribed organization. It should be on some sort of blacklist, really, because it's what it's providing for the country is detrimental. They're not sending their best, as the great Orange one once said about a different group of people. What about people who need medical devices? Very well said, Highlander. There's just so many things, medical devices that need to be running 24 hours a day. These things can't be switched off for a few hours every day. People would die. What are people going to do instead? Buy generators and then have to buy petrol to put into these generators? It's worse than people think. The UK had total net imports in the first. Fact Not Fiction, great to see you on the stream. Total net imports of the first quarter of 2022 of 4.9 terawatt hours, mostly from Truss's mates across the channel. It does make one wonder how short-sighted her comments really are. People will die, the Tories don't care. I remember Fact Non Fiction describing big problems ahead, but I had no idea it was something like this. I just imagine the damage this is going to do to society and damage to the economy. The economy is not as important, but this, of course, is going to make things even worse. Max, the NHS told to keep generators tanks full diesel prioritised to hospitals. I saw that as well. I saw an article about that. The NHS was told, yes, make sure that your diesel generators at full capacity, be ready for the winter. And I imagine that this is not just a whim. I think this is really preparing for the worst. Thanks so much, Alistair. This is really concerning. I hope this is not some sort of scam that Nigel Farage is involved in. Yes, pretend that there's a shortage so that he will drive up the price and I can bet against it or something like that. I wouldn't put it past some of them. All Shorts did a video about that earlier today. I'll check that out. Thanks a lot. Anyway, guys, before we move on, I just want to take a short comedy break. We need that. Things are just getting worse and worse. I'll show you this clip and then we'll be back in just a second. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you will.
Just tell us a little bit about...
No, not that. What am I doing? Oh, no, this. Sorry.
I'll tell you all what happened. I was doing in my caravan down in Mar-a-Lago, and Melania, she's away on holidays somewhere. I don't know where. I'll contact her later. But anyhow, I was in my house coat, my wee slippers. I had a hamburger and a big Diet Coke, and I was lying on my lazy boy chair watching the telly. I was watching America's Got Talent. And the door get booted in and it was the FBI, and honest to God, everybody was absolutely up to high do. I've no had a minute to myself since it happened, and then they opened my safe. Honestly, it's terrible. This is against my freedom of speech.
Well said, Janie. I'm a hamburgers. Anyway, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that later on the stream as well. The Agent Orange, as I like to call him, had his resort broken into by the FBI. Fearless Wolf, thanks so much for that super chat. You think blackouts are bad? We're going to get the mother of all recessions. Investors already leaving London because the UK is too volatile. It's like, try to find something positive. Like, what is there positive out of this? There is nothing positive. It just gets worse and worse. Thanks for that super chat as well. Anyway, I just go back to what Liz Truss has been saying. I just want one of these comments. So Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak at this moment are doing a hosting where they're being asked questions by, I think, members of the audience, but also a journalist. One of the questions is, I find the term recreational drugs objectionable. Children are suffering as a result. Sunak says he agrees. He approaches this as a parent. He has never taken drugs. I don't know. I don't know about that. And he will be incredibly tough on people who do, tough on people who take drugs, and those who supply them. Okay, but some people taking drugs, like somebody taking drugs, what impact does that have on other people's lives? As long as they're not, stealing to get access to these drugs, if they're just buying these drugs, what harm are they doing to anyone? And then he's going to punish the people who supply them. If you legalize that, you could actually charge, you could put taxes on this. People would still want the drugs. Making things illegal doesn't stop people from taking them. Anyway, he also said he'd be tough on grooming gangs. He wants the ethnicity of offenders to be recorded. No government he leads will let political correctness get in the way of dealing with this, he says. So he's trying to keep, the BNP or UKIP voter bloc on side. I'm not sure which it is. Oh my goodness, it's a real race to the bottom here. Liz Truss says the Tories, or it says here, Sunak again, Tories will be absolutely hammered at election if they don't target energy bills support on those most in need, says Sunak. The question was, you spent £15 billion on your last support package for energy bills. Are you willing to spend the same again? Sunak says the last time he provided help to people mostly in need, he will do the same again, and he will go further this time because bills are going up. He says Truss was wrong to rule out direct support for households. Truss did say last week she was opposed to handouts. Okay, but she was not ruling out that sort of support. Sunak says the Tories should target help on people who need it most. If they don't, the British people will not forgive us. Our support should be targeted. Okay, if it's targeted, it means that it's means tested. And if it's means tested, it means that there is a bureaucracy involved, which is a cost. Okay. Not on massive tax cuts for the very wealthy people. It should be targeted on helping people who need it most, who most need it. And if we don't do that, I'll tell you, not only will millions of people suffer, we'll get absolutely hammered when it comes to an election. The British people will not forgive us for not doing that. Yeah, well, I don't believe they're actually going to do anything. This is the other article, and then the one on drugs. And then there was... it's just this... once again, if the Tories ignore this, it will be an absolute disaster. And Martin Lewis, the energy saving and money saving expert, he says tragic news. The latest Cornwall Insight prediction based on Ofgem's new methodology is an 81% price cap rise in October. So taking a typical bill of £3,582 a year and a further 19% in January, so £4,266. Action and planning is needed now. The zombie government needs to wake up sooner than the 5th of September. The 5th of September is when the new Prime Minister will take over, and it needs to happen before that. Healy, thanks so much for that super chat. I used to be a heroin addict. The criminalisation is what caused the most damage, not the drug themselves. Sunak is just throwing red meat. Yes, and it's great to hear that you recovered, and that's great to have you on the stream. Thanks so much for that super chat. People will take drugs because of issues in their lives generally, okay, and it's important that you provide support, you provide assistance to people. Making it a criminal offence, what does it do? It puts money in the pockets of gangs, while instead you could be providing support for people. But if you legalise it, of course, you allow more people to access it, but it can be controlled. The quality can be controlled, and the state can make money off it. It can be taxed. And unfortunately, there's so much stigma involved. I think we're a long way away from it being actually legalised and decriminalised. Thanks for that super chat. Thanks and thanks so much for sharing that message. Magic, thank you so much. He gave support to those in need with 4 houses and 10 cars. As for 4 households, the same as those without 2 pennies to rub together. And he didn't seem it feasible to try and claw back some of this money. Maybe it's too expensive to claw back the money. But, when it comes to universal credit, mountains will be moved to get any money back that somebody was given in error. But when it came to the furlough scheme, no, it's okay. It's lost. We'll just write it off. Of course, it's probably because, as you said here, many people who have 4 houses and 10 cars receive this money. And which party do you think people with 4 houses and 10 cars normally vote for? There you have it. Thanks, Magic. Anyway, let's move on. There was another story I wanted to bring up. I think this is it here.
Good morning. It is Monday, the 8th of August. Our top story today. A BBC survey of more than 7,000 dental practices has found that 9 in 10 NHS dentists across the UK are not accepting new adult patients for treatment on the health service.
Those in need are having to wait years, and some have taken matters into their own hands, as our correspondent Jenny Kumar reports.
Now, just to let you know that this is quite distressing. There are stories about people removing their own teeth because they can't afford to wait, because they've been abandoned by what they see as the NHS. But I think this, of course, is part of the problem of underfunding the NHS. People can't wait. If people have problems with their teeth, they need to have it dealt with immediately. And unfortunately, the government have been ignoring the NHS for the last since they took power. Because they want more and more people to go privately, and of course, if you go privately, you have to pay for that. Fearless World, thanks so much for that super chat. The USA has spent over $1 trillion doing the war on drugs since the 1970s with the feds. Please don't PC plod. Don't PC plod is going to make a no. Sorry, just laughing at PC plod. Yes. Look, the war on drugs has been an absolute failure. It has actually caused more problems than it has created. It caused more problems than it has fixed. And if you look at countries like Colombia, or Mexico, if they were actually to legalize drugs there, they would take away a huge amount of resources that these gangs have access to. As soon as something is driven underground, someone will turn it into a business. And that's what's been happening over the last number of years. Of course, I believe it's true that the war on drugs stems from an attempt to punish minorities in the US and hippies. They were going after the hippies because the hippies would normally vote for the Democrats, and African Americans would vote for the Democrats. And the Nixon regime decided we'll start this war because it will actually punish our opponents. We can criminalize our opponents. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Dental students backlog as no practical in the last 2 years, so no one trained, Max. So it's a massive shortage of students.
My partner was in so much pain, she asked me to take her tooth out with a pair of pliers.
I don't know if you could hear that, the audio is a little bit low, but he said, my partner was in so much pain she asked me to take her teeth out with a pair of pliers.
This is the second tooth I pulled out myself because I was in so much pain.
I'm living on porridge and soup and I need new teeth.
Across the country, people are taking shocking steps to deal with their dental problems.
That's the second one I pulled out, and that's how it goes in quite deep into the gum. There's the gap. So it's just a matter of getting a grip on that as hard as you can and pulling like crazy until the nerve gives way.
In pain and unable to get the help he needed, Mark recently took matters into his own hands.
It did bleed when I got it out, so luckily I was ready for it. It managed to mop up any drips.
How is this? This is the type of future that Jacob Rees-Mogg wants. He wants to go back to Victorian times where people would pull out their own teeth or do their own surgery. I don't know.
Mark had a dentist in Penzance near his home in Cornwall, but when he tried to get an appointment 3 years ago, he was told that he was no longer on their NHS list.
How difficult has it been to find an NHS dentist?
It's been impossible. I've tried the local surgeries down here, around here, and none of them are taking any NHS patients on. I can't afford to go down the private route because the amount of treatment I've got now is probably going to be unaffordable for me.
So obviously, because he tried to do the work himself, obviously he's not a dentist, so he's messed up. So now to fix that, it would be just too expensive.
The analysis reveals that coastal and rural areas like here in Devon and Cornwall have become so-called dental deserts. Our researchers called more than 460 NHS dental practices across the southwest. They found that 98% of them weren't accepting any new adult patients. In Newquay, on the North Cornwall coast, Denise is living off soup and soft food because of problems with her teeth.
I've only got a few at the front there, and they're loose and wobbly, and so I can't bite anything, but none at the back. I can't even eat a salad now because I can't bite into a tomato, cucumber, even if it's chopped up into little pieces. It's still too hard. I can't eat them. I'm down to eating slop.
Denise needs a denture. She's been on an NHS waiting list for 4 years. And living on pension credit, she can't afford to go private. She fears without treatment, she'll lose the rest of her teeth.
I do not want to walk around with no teeth. It's horrible.
But also the health issues that this is going to cause. Because if you're not able to chew your food, you're not going to eat healthy in a healthy way. The first digestion is in the mouth, they say. So this is going to create health problems later on, which means another burden on the NHS.
After 50 odd years of working, it would be nice if I could have a set of teeth.
This is an issue that's impacting across the country. A petition calling for more NHS dentists highlights how widespread the problems are. More than 180,000 people have signed it. How shocking some of the experiences that people have been sharing on the petition.
Give you shivers of people filing their own teeth down with nail files and taking teeth out of pliers, developing...
Nail files and pliers.
That's it.
Joshua Keeling set the petition up after his partner struggled to get the help she needed when they moved to Dorset.
So my partner was in abject agony. She turned around to me and said, "Can you get the pliers and just take my tooth out? I can't carry on anymore. I'll just have to deal with having no teeth." And I thought, this situation is awful.
Hello, Boys Dental Surgery.
Our research suggests that dentists are giving up doing NHS work. Ian is still seeing patients, but he says the contract that dentists work under is driving many of his colleagues away.
They've been trying to hang on to a broken system for such a long time. The problem is that for most dentists, the service they want to offer their patients is not readily available if they continue and stay in the NHS. It's a crying shame.
NHS England has recently announced some changes to the contract, including paying dentists more for more complex cases. But the union, the British Dental Association, argues the government's plans are too little too late and fail to get to the root of the problem.
Okay, a little bit of pun at the end, unfortunately. But this is not something new. This has been going on for a long time. So what needs to happen is a new contract has to be agreed between dentists and the NHS. And the problem, of course, we've seen it before for the NHS, is their budget has been blocked. They're not able to, they don't have enough money, so they have to cut certain things. They have to hold on to staff, so they have to try and pay staff more. But at the same time, they have to cut back on services. And this is probably something they're cutting back on. Freddie B, thanks so much for that super chat. If you get a dentist, they can leave you worse. My dad got a dentist in the north and absolutely butchered his mouth. No top teeth and ill-fitting dentures. Can't eat properly, but can't afford to fix it. I'm so sorry to hear that. What's happening also now is that people are going abroad. People are resorted to going abroad to get their teeth fixed. I remember when I was in Ireland, it was very, very expensive. I think, Freddie, you're in Ireland too, as you said, in the north. People are travelling to the north, to Northern Ireland, to get their teeth fixed. But if they're unlucky and find a bad dentist, it costs 3 or 4 times as much to get the teeth fixed, or people just can't afford it. Certain healthcare plans will cover it, but then you need to be paying into them. So you need private health insurance. But not everyone can afford that, of course. Thanks for that super chat, Freddie. And I really hope that your dad is able to get that sorted out eventually. Hopefully something will change. I had to pay £2,000 for work on 2 teeth recently. No choice. The dentist wasn't that great either. Is there not a standard? You would imagine that, it's a very qualified, it's a very highly skilled job. You would imagine that the people you're getting are highly skilled. Is Grant Shapps going to start getting involved in this as well? I bloody well hope not. Say, do you have teeth? Okay, we'll make you a dentist. Can you drive a car? Well, you can probably drive a heavy goods vehicle as well. Joking aside, but something has to be done here, and it has to. This is something that the opposition parties need to be looking into. This is something they need to be pushing. We saw with Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak that they want to cut so-called EU red tape. Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg before has said that he wants to cut civil servants, and it says here, plan to axe 91,000 civil servants, only possible with cuts to services. And there we go. I've said this before, it's about cutting public services. This is what the Tories want to do. This is their goal, is to reduce the size of government so the government's only function is to funnel money to the private sector or to their donors. Outsource everything, privatize as much as possible. So the government really does nothing. It's just the key to start the machine. And the machine is privately run. Doubts have been cast on claims by Boris Johnson that it would be possible to go ahead with plans to axe 91,000 civil servants without harming frontline services. The Prime Minister wrote in May to civil servants justifying plans for a reduction in the headcount of almost 20%, saying the government must reduce its costs just as many families are doing. Okay, this idea, and I hate this analogy, I hate this comparison that politicians make with government. They compare government to a household or to a family. Families can't invent money. Families can't raise finance in the way the government does. It's not like a household. A person can go bankrupt. Generally, countries don't, because they have central banks where they can print more money. Now, of course, they can go bankrupt, but not like a family. Anyway, just really hate that comparison, because it's a distraction. It's an attempt to convince people that we need to cut back on public services because they're expensive, when they are necessary. But anyway, but a review by Steve Barclay, Johnson's former chief of staff, is reported to have caused the Treasury to have some second thoughts about the plans, giving the potential impact on wider services. Johnson had tasked the cabinet with cutting staff by a fifth, telling ministers during an away day in Stoke-on-Trent. I don't know why I keep saying Stoke-on-Trent. Stoke-on-Trent earlier this year, that every bit of cash saved on government spending could be better used elsewhere. Yeah, like the 350 million for the NHS because of Brexit. Trade unions representing civil servants seized on reports about Treasury rescindance, which Labour said was clear that there was a disastrous plan would cause havoc. Historic staff shortages causing huge delays for people who are trying to access appointments and renew passports and driving licenses. And this is something that was raised some time ago. There's a shortage of staff to deal with the processing of passports. Jacob Rees-Mogg's response was, well, because they're working from home. Nothing to do with that. It's because there aren't enough staff. Because the government keeps cutting freezes on new hiring, and as somebody said in the chat, new dentists, there's almost no new training for dentists, so you're going to have a shortage not just now but in the future as well. Number 3, families are warm and cozy. Yes. Thanks so much for that super chat, number 3. Yes. Compared to government. Family look out for each other. The government doesn't seem to be looking out for a lot, apart from itself. If Boris Johnson wants to compare the family, it's probably he's comparing it to his family, where he has all of these children and he doesn't even know their names or where they are or if they exist. Anyway, now the government is not only blatantly come to the same conclusion, but also found this shoddy proposal that would have cost the taxpayer over £1 billion in redundancy payments. Yeah, because if you lay off these staff, you have to pay redundancy. And you're laying them off for what reason? Because it needs to look good politically. The plans have been backed by Liz Truss, the Conservative leadership frontrunner, who has been accused of making ludicrous claims. She vowed to cut civil service salaries and reduce expenditure to recoup $11 billion a year in a war on Whitehall waste. Too many W's there. However, the Whitehall insider who is said to have worked on the plans to axe tens of thousands of civil servants was quoted in the Financial Times as saying that the Prime Minister had announced the move without fully thinking through the implications. Boris Johnson, talking before thinking. Boris Johnson doing before considering. It's not like it's happened before. However, the Whitehall insider said, you can only deliver 91,000 cuts by actual cuts to major frontline services. There's no way that you can get to that number through efficiency savings or reductions in HQ staff. Like, if the population has increased, that means that there is greater demand on public services. So that means that you need more people. But you don't cut the public service unless it's ideologically driven. It doesn't make any sense at all. But then we're talking about Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Jacob Rees-Mogg. So just a little bit more about what's happening with the that story before about the NHS. It says here, what are the impending threats to the NHS this autumn? So COVID is still an issue as the UK emerges from one wave of COVID driven by the BA4 and BA5 subvariants of Omicron. Experts have predicted at least one more will hit in autumn and winter. So there's another bout of COVID coming. Influenza Australia has experienced a particularly bad flu season, with the virus hitting earlier and harder than usual, raising concerns that the Northern Hemisphere could face a similar surge in infections later this year. The situation is in part down to the low levels of flu in recent years as a result of lockdowns and other measures, which has meant that there has been a waning of immunity in the population, leaving people more vulnerable to flu. And there's another problem, of course, related to the cost of living crisis, is that in order to fight these viruses, to fight these infections, you need to have enough food to eat, and you need to be, comfortable in a warm home. There was a man calling into LBC last week talking about how he's been recovering from pneumonia and he's been taking cold showers because he's afraid to turn on the heating. He's afraid to turn on the electricity or the gas, whatever it was that he was using to heat his water. This is going to cause chronic problems later on, which the NHS is going to have to struggle with. Cost of living crisis. As the cost of energy and food rise, experts have warned the NHS could come under extra pressure. One concern is that the chilly homes that mean an increase in sickness among those with conditions that are exacerbated by the cold, such as heart disease and chronic lung disease. There's another thing is, if homes are not properly ventilated, you're going to end up with mold and mildew. And then, if during a a cost of living crisis, people are going to keep their homes as closed as possible to keep whatever heat they have inside. This is going to create problems. An inability to eat adequately can also affect the body's ability to stay warm, with some experts have even warned that there could be a rise in malnutrition, particularly among children. That's not something you saw on the side of a big red bus back in 2016. Malnutrition for all, or for most. Workforce shortages, of course, according to the cross-party Commons Health and Social Care Select Committee, the NHS is facing the greatest workforce crisis in its history, with estimates from the Nuffield Trust suggesting that in England alone there could be as many as 50,000 vacancies for nurses and 12,000 for doctors. Goes on to say, while Barclay has placed an emphasis on the need to hire staff from overseas, some have raised concerns that there would be ethical conundrums, warning the approach could deprive developing countries of their own highly trained staff. This is something that has been mentioned, that the UK could end up paying more for doctors and nurses, but they would bring them in from abroad, and this could have a negative impact on developing countries who are struggling to hold on to their doctors and nurses. And then pay, while the government has recently revealed details of a pay rise for the NHS staff, the figures involved have been criticised by the British Medical Association, noting the offer of a 4.5% award to some doctors this year is far below the rate of inflation, while junior doctors who have an annual 2% pay rise agreed before the pandemic get no further increase. So inflation is running at 13%, we're going to give you 2%. And because it was agreed before the pandemic, there's nothing you can do about it. What is this going to do? It's going to force them to go on strike. And, I understand people are concerned about waiting lists and getting access to medical treatment. But this stems from where? From Boris Johnson and the Tories. They're the ones ultimately responsible. They're the ones who are running the country. If Boris Johnson doesn't like this, he should fuck off. Sorry for my language, but he needs to go. Leave it to somebody else, somebody who actually cares about doing it. Unfortunately, I think you're going to have to wait for a general election before you find somebody who actually cares about fixing these problems. Because fixing the problems also requires you to admit that there is a problem. And after 12 years of the Tories being in power, none of the Tories want to really admit that there's a problem. So how can you fix the problem unless you say, actually, there is a problem? This is the conundrum. In addition, some senior doctors are locked in a battle over limits on tax-free pension contributions, a situation that has led to some consultants to turn down shifts or even retiring early to avoid heavy tax bills. But that needs to be reformed as well. There are some people standing up against this. You probably know who this is. If it loads.
People are fed up with the way they're treated at work. We need to turn that mood into real organisation on behalf of the working class.
Enough is enough.
There's always another crisis, and it's always workers who pay the price. We've suffered the biggest pay squeeze in history, and workers become all about working harder and faster for less. And now they want you to pay for it all again. Well, it's time somebody else paid the price.
Things can't go on like this. Record profits for big business, record number of billionaires, record wealth for the top 10%. But life is getting harder for everyone else.
You always make the sacrifices, yet they always reap the rewards. None of this is inevitable.
It's a political choice, your need or their greed.
So it's time everyone in this country who's got a rotten landlord, who's got a low wage, who's got in-work benefits, who's going to a food bank, who can't get a doctor's appointment, who can't get housing. It's about time we all stood up together and said, enough is enough.
This cost of living crisis affects us all.
This is not just about rail workers or cleaners.
Posties, engineers or call centre workers.
Or nurses, or teachers, or firefighters.
It's about you and every workplace and every community across this country.
It's time for a campaign that draws the line.
It's time to say
enough is enough.
Fair pay, affordable bills, enough to eat and a decent place to live. These things are not luxuries, they're your rights.
This is a campaign to bring people together.
For a real pay rise, to slash energy bills, to end food poverty and for decent homes for all, and to finally tax the rich and big business.
If you agree, share this video, spread the word.
And sign up today at weSayEnough.co.uk.
We can't be divided. We need everybody campaigning for a better deal.
We will be organising rallies, we will be forming community groups, and we will be on picket lines.
We're going to be standing up for ourselves.
We're going to fight.
We're not all in this together, we never have been. The people that are in this together are working class people who've been mugged for far too long.
It's time to say enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. It's time to channel anger into action.
Very, very powerful video, and I agree with everything they're saying here. This video has 3.8 million views since yesterday, so that's amazing. And you know, if the opposition are not doing anything, and I'm talking about the Labour Party, there's a Labour Party MP in this clip, but if the Labour Party are not really doing anything, somebody has to stand up. And it seems to be that while it's worker-based, it's something that affects pretty much everyone, apart from the billionaire class. Anyone would think Marx was right about something, some things at this point. Real Labour people. This was awesome. I agree. Wonderful clip, wonderful video. The people we know in this clip, we know that they're authentic. They're not just actors repeating some phrase. They are real people. They're real workers. And they are fighting, and they are continuing to fight. And something has to change. So I think what they're doing is, over the next number of weeks, they're organising events and rallies where they're going to try and turn the tide. I really hope what goes along with this is a letter writing campaign. I've said this before, it's not as sexy as marching in the street, but a letter writing campaign to MPs, because they're the ones who can change this. They're the ones who can put pressure on the new government, Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, whoever it is. Let's forget about Boris Johnson. It's a lost case, lost cause at this stage. But they can put pressure on MPs to put pressure on the government. If MPs feel that they could lose their seat, they're more likely to do something about it. That's all that there's left. I fully agree with them going on marches and organising events, getting people, ordinary members of the public involved. If they can do it as well, it's, and something very positive I've seen over the last number of days the last number of weeks, is how members of the public are not buying the right-wing media angle, the narrative. Oh, they're rich train drivers. They have no reason to go on strike. The public are realising that the ones who are going on strike are just like them. And while the jobs of the railway operators are under threat today, it could be their job tomorrow. And I think there's a real change. And I'm glad that the right-wing media are not... their plan to convince people to be against the unions, against workers, is failing. And I hope it continues to fail. Fearless Will, thanks so much for that super chat. I'm Batman. It's from the Chris Nolan films, that music. I didn't know it was from... I thought I knew... I thought the music was familiar, so that's good. Magic, Zara Sultana and Ian Byrne are both Labour. I didn't know Ian Byrne. Okay, I knew Zara, so she's been very active in the House of Commons. She's been very vocal about these issues, and not just recently, but since she won her seat, she has been very vocal about this. Ian Byrne, I'm not very familiar with him, so I will check him out after this. Something has to change. Something has to break. The Conservative and Non-Unionist Party, Scotland emailed your MSP MP protest outside Holyrood Parliament. The Rook do the same. Starmer should be setting out Labour's policy at the forthcoming conference next month. That's good to hear. I hope cost of living is front and centre in that. And something radical. You need something radical. You need something that people will sit up and listen. Same old policies from the past are not going to cut it. Independent Scotland would have enough for this. Would have had enough of this pish. Yes. They would take no pish. I keep writing to my MP, but as I'm in a Tory heartlands, she does nothing. She has never voted against the government and sees me as bothersome. Sorry to hear that, but try to ask other members of your family, neighbours, people who agree with you, to send letters as well, because 1 or 2 letters they're not going to listen to, but 100 letters. I don't know your constituency. I don't know what majority they have, but imagine an MP who has a majority of 100 or 400 or 500 or even 1,000. That MP is very worried if they receive 100 letters saying, "What the hell are you doing? Change direction, we'll vote you out." Yes, MPs will vote according to party lines, but if enough MPs receive enough votes or enough letters, and they communicate this to the whip of the party, then it could be okay. Actually, we should go in the opposite direction. We should hold back on this policy, whatever it is. It requires a lot of time and effort. It's not something that's going to have an immediate effect. But once again, I do think it's more effective. Unfortunately, it's more effective than marches. Marches are wonderful. They have a massive impact. But when it comes to, and this is a problem of Parliament, this is a problem of the first past the post system. An MP can watch a march, watch 100,000 people, 1 million people march right past their home and not batter an eyelid because they know that their seat is safe. But if they received 100 letters, 200 letters in the post, they would be very concerned. Mark exactly what somebody should do. I write to my Labour MP and she doesn't reply. Also write to the party and say, I write to my MP and they don't reply. Why are they not replying? Not just Tory MPs, but also Labour MPs. The Labour Party also needs to know that people are angry about this and that they're willing to vote for another party, the Green Party or a Socialist Party or something like that at the next election. The Labour Party shouldn't be let off the hook here. They need pressure applied to them as well. Get loads of letters and send them for a different household. They'd forget your name and address. You could do that. Change the letters somewhat. So that's a clever plan, actually. Yeah, because they wouldn't know but I think they could look in the register, the electoral register, to see if your name is there. So be like, this person isn't in the electoral register. Why? But maybe it could be worth a try. Writing letters is boring though, but it is it has more of an effect than it's worth it, I guess. Yeah, as I said, writing letters is not sexy, it's not interesting, you may think I'm the only one writing, but if you can organize a group of people to write together and the letters all arrive on the same day or in the same week, the MP would really sit up and listen. They have to be, letters that will say, march to the post office and post the letters. Yes, well said, Freddie B. It's not an individual action. It has to be organized. It has to be a group action, and I do think it has an impact. If an MP is afraid of losing their seat, they'll sit up and listen. If you can't a letter is one way. It could be also organizing a meeting with the MP. You don't have to be a voter. You don't have to be have voted for the MP. But if there's a community organizer in your area, they could organize voters together to organize a town hall with them, with the MP, with a meeting with them, and generally this is another way. But I think a letter is much more effective because in a way they can ignore some of the comments at the town hall, and they can get a general idea of whether you voted for them or not. But in a letter, it's very difficult for them to ascertain that. Electing politicians with integrity would also help. Yes, but that's the difficult way. You're asking a bit for the impossible there. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to finish with one final story here on Ukraine. Actually, no, I think I'll leave Ukraine. What happened, as you probably know, in Ukraine, there was an attack on Crimea, and we'll have to look into that maybe another time.
Just tell us.
So I just want to say it was an interesting event last night. What happened? Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago event, mansion was raided by the FBI, and they took away something like 14 or 15 boxes of material, which would be probably interesting. And I'm wondering what effect this will have on individuals, far-right individuals around the world, not just in the UK, but around the world, that have visited Trump and have some sort of connection to him.
A little bit about what happened down in Mar-a-Lago last night. President Trump has called it a raid. Was it such?
I don't think that's the right word, Jane. It's a court-authorized search warrant. That means the Department of Justice and the FBI went to a federal judge, a neutral and detached magistrate, and swore out a warrant which demonstrated probable cause for two things. One, that a crime had been committed, and second, that they would find evidence of that crime at the place they wanted to search, in this case, Mr. Trump's Florida home. So I think a raid is an inaccurate and unfortunate term. It's a court-authorized search warrant. They were lawfully present because a judge said they could be there.
So what were they looking for?
Right. So we don't entirely know because the search warrant is under seal. It will be unsealed at some point, but right now it remains sealed, and that's standard protocol. They're looking for evidence of a crime. Now, which crime and what evidence, that will all be specified in the warrant, and when we see it, we'll know more about that piece of it.
So that actual looking for evidence of a crime is quite interesting, isn't it? So it's not simply the case, as far as you're aware, that they're just looking to recover documents. They are actually looking for evidence of a crime, or is it the case that the fact that the documents that should be in the National Archives are there is a crime in itself?
Well, the documents in and of themselves could be the evidence of the crime, but to get a search warrant under U.S. law, and by the way, our Fourth Amendment comes from English common law. I mean, the antecedents were the objections of the colonists to English authorities using what were called general writs of assistance to do searches at any home at any time. And so our Fourth Amendment narrowed that right. It's much like English common law now. You have to have a specific crime, and you have to tell the judge, who is in a different branch of our government. So two branches of our government are involved in a search warrant. You have to tell the judge what it is you're looking for. That would be a violation of U.S. federal law. So it is rather specific. We just don't have the specifics yet, Jane.
But we are assuming that it's documentation that relates to his time as president, and that document, those should have been lodged in the National Archives. Why is it important? Why is there this precedent that these kind of notes or bits of paper that the president uses go to this special place?
Well, two things. First, we have something called the Presidential Records Act, which requires presidents to turn over their official papers to our National Archives. But second, and I think more important here, and this goes to your very good question, if the documents are classified at a high level, and disclosure of them could do grave damage to U.S. national security interests, well, then it's a crime. Actually, there are a suite of crimes related to mishandling or improperly retaining, or in the worst case, transmitting classified information. So that's the crime, or at least the potential crime. You can't mishandle, retain, transmit classified information. As a former president, Mr. Trump no longer has the authority to classify or declassify information, nor can he retain it. And so that could be the underlying reason why the FBI went to a judge and asked for the search warrant.
So it's maybe not something what people are thinking about. It's about, I think it's always going to come down to corruption. I don't think it's going to be so much related to his activities on the 6th of January. I think it's going to come more down to things that he has done while he was president, leaking information or giving information, not leaking, handing over confidential information or classified information to foreign powers, probably Saudi Arabia being one of them, or North Korea or China, or I don't know.
And has this ever happened before? He says that it's been unprecedented that a president has been treated like this.
Well, to my knowledge, unprecedented that the home of a former president would be searched, but very much precedent for the notion that if you break the law, regardless of who you are, then you suffer the consequences. Right now, the consequence is a search warrant. Again, authorized by a federal judge and lawfully executed. Whether or not he's charged, I have absolutely no idea, Jane. But there was a determination made by a federal judge that there was probable cause to believe a crime had been committed, and that you would find evidence at his home. So in that sense, this is what happens when people commit crimes. What is unprecedented is it happens to be a potential crime by a former president of the United States.
So we have to wait to see what they actually discovered, and then if they discovered something related to a crime, then I was going to say Boris Johnson, slip of the tongue there, Agent Orange, also known as Donald Trump, could potentially be arrested. I don't think he's going to be arrested. I don't think it would be, the fallout would be absolutely insane. We've seen what happened last year on the 6th of 2021, last January last year, when when those people marched and tried to kill the vice president and members of Congress. I don't think the federal government would like to see a rerun of that, and it's likely that if I keep saying Johnson, if Trump was arrested, you could be facing some sort of civil war, because these people are insane. They have demonstrated their insanity, and his support, I think, has dropped over the last number of years, but over the last number of months, I should say. But he still has a core base which is even more insane than the 6th of January, than they were on the 6th of January. Kevin Slims, thanks so much for that super chat. Saw you on Byline TV, and I made two observations. First, your voice doesn't match your face, okay? And second, if you are ever cast in a movie, I'd definitely be cast as a hitman. I love the show. It's the bald head, isn't it? Thanks. I take it as a compliment as a hitman. I don't have the body, the fitness level, unfortunately, as a hitman. But maybe if I can get back into shape, that I could try and find another career. Thanks so much for that, Kevin. Good to see you on the stream. Thanks. Peter, thank you so much for the super chat. If he's lucky, they found his porn collection, and I don't want to see it. I don't want to know what type of antics he gets up to in that place of his. Thanks so much, Peter, and thank you for that wonderful image. It's an amazing one. So, guys, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks so much for the super chats, greatly appreciated. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as always. And before we finish, we have our one for the road. Let me see. This should be it. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you will. And I'll see you same bat time, same bat channel on Friday. But before we finish, we have our funny video. Enjoy.
Oh my god, did you hear about the witch hunt? Witch hunt? Yeah, apparently it could be the worst corruption of justice since Stalin's show trials. Oh, do you mean the scandal of the postmasters who were convicted of fraud and sent to prison, despite it being caused by a glitch in the computer system that the company knew about? No. Or do you mean the young men convicted of murder through the joint enterprise law? No. Or are you talking about all those kids who've been strip-searched by the police for no good reason? What? No, of course not. Well, what are you talking about then? The Commons Privileges Committee investigation into Boris Johnson. Right. Such a witch hunt. That's the investigation into whether he misled Parliament when he said there were no parties in Downing Street during lockdown. Yes. Can you really call it a witch hunt when the witch has admitted to being a witch and has in fact turned themselves into a frog in public several times? But what's the point? He's already been removed as Prime Minister. He's still in office. But he's not doing anything, which I suppose is good in a way. These people are just being vindictive. What does it matter now? Deliberately lying to the House of Commons is a pretty big deal. How do you know it was deliberate? Well, that's why they're having an investigation. Kangaroo court, more like. He deserves a jury of his peers. More than half of the committee are Tory MPs. No, peers he appointed, like Zach Goldsmith and Yevgeny Lebedev and Ian Botham. That doesn't sound very balanced. You just hate Boris Johnson, and you just love him. Well, you know what they say, love will conquer hate. Then how did we end up with Brexit? Fair point. Another pint? Actually, I should probably get back to the office. I think I'm about to be put in charge of the Treasury for a bit.
The Boris Johnson witch hunt. Magic, just being in before the end, CPAC conference had a banner over the stage. We are all domestic terrorists. We'll post it on Discord later. I saw that, Magic. Yeah, that was... I don't know how to respond to that. Is it insane or is it a call to arms? Is it this sort of victim mentality or is it an actual... Yeah, we now have to go to war. It's really, really concerning. Thanks, guys, and have a great week. Stay safe, and thanks again for everything. Thanks for all of the chats. Thanks for all the super chats, and thanks to the moderators. See you on Discord if you are a member of Patreon. Otherwise, I'll see you on Friday. Take care. Good night.